temperatures almost touching 100. For all that's going on in the Santa Clarita Valley, check us out on social media. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Or download the free app. Or just go to hometownstation.com.
Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
And welcome to the Senior Hour, which is sponsored by Comfort Keepers in Home Care and Advanced Audiology. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host,
Dr. Jean Dorio.
On your hometown station, KHTS. This is a show for, about, and by seniors, giving information to enhance one's quality of life. And our guest this morning is Sharon Brubaker. She is a grief recovery specialist. Very, very interesting
And difficult.
profession.
And a difficult profession.
It's a difficult profession.
Especially for our seniors.
Especially for the seniors.
Yeah. They, every day, you know, you're living life. And I saw a patient yesterday who, he's in his 90s. He just lost his spouse. He just moved into a facility and doesn't like it.
Yeah.
He, you know, there's a lot of grief surrounding, psychological grief that's surrounding him. He's got some physical ailments, but in pretty good shape for somebody who's 92. But
92.
grief is there for our seniors.
100%. And I was going to piggyback on what you said, is that it is a difficult profession, but when I can see the changes in their face, when I can work with somebody and they see that I got it, that's a joy for me. But I would imagine that your patient is probably grieving something he wanted different, something he wanted to be better, more of what he did have. And that in itself is a loss, and it can affect our heart.
Well, he had 60 years of love and life and family, and, you know, then to lose that one person that you've been with for so long, traveled with, you know, built a company through, you know, he had a very difficult time. You can tell that, you know, he was just trying to hold on. But he was, you know, we gave him things and tools that his family was there. So we gave him tools, we think, to help him out, and goals as well. It's not an easy task. Purpose we lose, you know, as we get older. We retire, our kids move out.
Right.
But, you know, there are still things that seniors can hold on to, aren't there?
There absolutely are things they can hold on to. And completing that which they have lost is also really big. So let's just take, for an example, we walk a journey with everyone we're here with. And when they are no longer with us, that journey is just cut off, right? And so what I do is I help them complete the journey. So I would sit with him and help him complete his journey with his wife. And part of that sometimes, even though it's a little tough, is the saying of goodbye, saying of everything that we were so happy to have shared with them. And talk about all of the lost of hopes, dreams, and expectations, things I thought this was going to go a little bit longer, or I wanted it to be a little different. So that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, and, you know, you know, it's been 5 months for him. So and the family has been great, and they've helped him through that, the initial problem. But now for him to find new purpose in life was, I think, when I came in on board and I heard, you know, the part that you're talking about, Sharon, is, you know, trying to get him through to complete the journey. You know, I was so lucky because I realized he did complete the journey with his wife, but now he was just trying to find, what do I do at this point to continue moving forward?
Another thing that comes into that grieving process is anger.
Yes.
And that's very prevalent. It's always there.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't recognize it, but it is there.
Yes, it is.
Definitely there.
Yeah.
And because I lost my son, 26 years old.
Yeah.
And what did I do wrong? You know, there's a lot of guilt involved.
Right.
Guilt, and then you get very, very angry. That should not have happened.
Yes.
Why did he leave? You know? And you have to go through that anger process. You really do.
Yes.
And for me, it helped when I got into counseling.
Yeah.
It really helped because a lot of things that I was feeling had a lot to do with my upbringing, and it's you have to get the whole picture.
100%. I'm so
Absolutely.
glad you said that.
Yes.
So what I do is I do look at the whole picture. It is because we know that loss is cumulative and cumulatively negative, right? So it will build upon itself. So something that I may have suffered a loss from or a misunderstanding from a childhood can actually come up during a loss and can
Exactly.
attach to that anger. The other thing that I want to share also in what you're saying is the family has been around them. I think the most important thing, and probably what you did when you sat with your patient, is really giving them the safe place to talk, giving them the place to share that anger without being cut off. We don't want to quickly just start handing them tissues if they start crying. Just let them be and let them get it out because they're dying. Grievers are dying for someone to listen to them. They want to talk, and they need to be listened to and heard with respect. Plus, they're trying to sort it out in their own brain. Then the numbness
Yeah.
wears off.
What happened?
What happened? How did this happen? How did I get
Absolutely.
picked to be this
It's
one?
bewildering.
Yes.
It really is.
I think a lot with children is we go, I was the child of a father who was sick. I went to right away to trying to fix it and making him feel better and making him comfortable instead of just being that, sometimes that safe place to just give him a chance to talk. It's the
Well-
biggest thing we can do for them.
And a lot of times, at least in the medical profession in the past, doctors and physicians used to be a place to go for for patients to let loose not just the physical problems taking place, but the emotional problems that are taking place, the psychological problems that are taking place. But it just doesn't seem that there's the time that's being given to these patients at this point. You got 5 or 10 minutes to spew out your physical problems, and the mental anguish that one might be going through are not even talked about or listened to. So this is an ongoing problem that we face in this country with our seniors not getting listened to by a medical doctor. And I gave him, and I don't look at the clock, but he had 2 hours yesterday with family. I spoke with the family for the first hour in a private place without him, and then we moved into his area and talked with him. And I'd say it was about 2 hours that we discussed all the issues, but we ended up, I got that full picture. And that's a part of how I've practiced medicine. Unfortunately my colleagues cannot do that these days, but I think it's important that if you have ancillary help out there with counselors and social workers and people who can capture that picture, I think it's important that that be allowed to happen. We just don't understand the opportunities that are there for it, or we just don't have those opportunities and they go by the wayside. And I think sometimes that senior suffers because of it.
Exactly.
That's true, and you have to really be aware of suicidal tendencies.
Yeah.
Because I almost killed myself
Yeah.
after I lost him. I got on my motorcycle and I went up to the end of the street and up the hill. This was before the 14 freeway was there, and I was ready to just drive it off.
Yeah.
And I saw my house in the distance, and I thought, Barbara, what are you doing? And that is a very, very strong part of it. When
Absolutely.
you lose someone that's so near and dear to you. I don't want to live anymore.
Because the pain is so bad.
That's exactly right.
Yes, the pain is so bad.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And speaking about this particular patient, he did express interest in end-of-life law that we have in California and Oregon and 3 other states, and expressed that. And the family was alarmed by that expression, but I explained to them it wasn't that he was going in that direction, but he wanted to know what his options were. I mean,
Right.
he was thinking very clearly about just knowing what he could do if he gets to a certain point. So, I think people, when they have the time and people do listen, have the ability to, follow a line of thinking that's logical and can be helpful to them, getting them back on track.
And sometimes grievers, when they come to me, they're embarrassed or to even mention that they thought that. But sometimes they will share, and they'll share that, I really don't want to live anymore, or I feel really bad, or don't think ill will of me, but I thought this, like the thought came through my mind. And I follow it up with the same question every time. Do I have to be worried about you? Do I need to call someone? And 9 times out of 10, it's always no. They just want me to know that they thought it. And it always goes back to the heart. I don't even know how to breathe. I feel as though there's no air in the room.
Right.
Like they're suffocating, standing there in front of you, and they can't figure it out. And so that sometimes that fleeting memory thought will come to their mind, and that will definitely be where they go. So yes, I agree with you, Barbara. It is a thought that quite often grievers think of.
Well, for our listeners, I think one of the biggest problems that they do face is one of the two spouses, they become the caregiver, and then at some point they lose their spouse. And it's probably one of the most difficult things to grieve over, and to be able to get yourself back in line again, to really live life again. And that it happens every day here in Santa Clarita, and how they handle it. How should Sharon, let's talk to the caregivers first. Let's talk to the kids, mostly, of these patients that we see who have just lost their spouse. How do we go about helping these particular individuals?
I think the grieving process and the grieving work that we need to do as caregivers is we need to do our grieving work all along. We don't just wait until the end or until they're no longer here and to do our goodbye. Our grieving process is something we can do all along. So, for example, when I was taking care of my dad, and when we decided to put him on palliative care, which meant he and I were no longer going to be leaving the house to go to the doctor's visit, that was a grieving experience. We had a loss there. He had a loss of mobility. He went into a chair at that point. And so I grieved that portion of the loss right there for myself. That once they become bedridden, then that's another loss. We can grieve all the way along as the changes happen. Whenever the normal, which a lot of times people will call it the new normal, whenever it changes, we can grieve those experiences right along, so that it's just helping us to relieve some of the pressure as we're going along.
In this particular case, with her passing away 5 months ago, as I got the history and tried to get a full understanding of the story, a diagnosis was made that the patient was ill and would be terminal. And she lasted about 6 months or so, but it was a sudden diagnosis, but it was also a path that she was going to take that they knew about. And so they did, like you just said, Sharon, they did start that process of trying to keep themselves going in a direction and allowing him to understand the emotional side of what he was now going to experience and accepting that. So that part of the process, you're right, you have to start in the beginning so you can follow that line to help the individual cope later down the line.
So I'm going to give you some tips real quick that I think will be helpful. And Barbara, it's sort of like what you said. So we review our entire relationship with the person, right? So I review my entire relationship, and I realized that 5 years ago, my dad and I, this is just an example, my dad and I had a fight, and it was never really settled. So I can grieve in real time. I would go to my dad and say, remember that time you and I were fighting over the color of the sky, and you said it was blue and I said it was absolutely green, and it never got settled? I want to apologize for that because I never really finished that with you, and I just want to have that discussion with you. So anything that we need to apologize for, we can do that in real time. Anything we need to forgive them for. Dad, I also want you to know I forgive you for that time you brought up the color of the sky and we got into that big fight. And that's grieving in real time.
It is.
And I
It
want
really
you to know
is.
that I love you. The other thing that's also important is letting them know how awesome it is for them to have been chosen to be on your journey. This has been so cool to have you. And sometimes those conversations, especially if you're not used to having them, are a little tough to have. And you don't want to freak the person out. They're like, why are you coming up to me saying this now? So you want to try to interject it wherever you can, little bits here and there. Just try to think over your whole entire walk with them and your life with them and making sure you're getting to tell them everything that you need to tell them that's so important. If you get the chance, for sure. For sure, you want to try to do that. So that's sort of grieving in real time. And that will be helpful. That's helpful to the process, for sure.
Yeah, it is. But the thing that helped me through my grieving process is all the good things that occurred. Thinking back on, hey, we had a great time there. Look what you did, that motorcycle. You're one of the world motorcycle racers. And nobody did what you did.
Yeah.
You know? And it helped in my grieving process. All of the fun things and the good things that did occur.
Yes.
It was sometimes very painful, but on the other hand, it was, oh, wow, remember that? Yes.
Yeah. And that's part 3. So it's apologies. We apologize and we forgive. And then our significant emotional statements are all the things that are amazing, all the things that I loved, all the things that I need to share, that were so great. My dad was a funny, funny guy, and it was just so cool to be able to walk through some of those stories and just really thanking him for being a provider for me and thanking him for always being there. I was able to grieve with my father in real time and have great conversations with him. And I will share with you that all of my brothers and sisters, we all stood around my dad at certain times, and it was myself who led the conversation because that was not how we talked in my house. We didn't say I love you. We weren't huggy kissy. And so I started the conversation, and then we all just kind of went, and he smiled. He enjoyed it. It was difficult at first, but once we started, it just kind of took its own natural path. But I agree with you, Barbara. There are a lot of great things. You have to remember those as well.
You do. You really do. Because that helps you work through that grieving process.
Exactly. So we tell the truth about ourselves always. We tell the truth about ourselves always, and we tell the truth about that relationship. So if there's something unsettled, we have to be able to handle that. That's where we go in that situation.
That's right. And it's very important to go there. Extremely important.
And sometimes people have doubt that they've made any contribution at all to one's own life, to another person's life, to a family. They lose those little concepts of that this is what you truly have done, and you don't realize those contributions that have been made. And it's, I think, important for themselves and their family members to reiterate and bring those back, make them alive again. This is what you've done.
Yeah.
This is how you, in your work, in your family, in the careers that you have done something that contributed to society.
Yes, for sure, 100%. And sometimes in the pain, and when the pain is so deep, we can't see that.
Yeah.
And so having the person on the outside looking in, reminding us of how great it was, it will help you. It will definitely help to have that conversation.
Yeah, it will, and that's something that we really must consider doing.
Yeah.
It's very, very important.
And Barbara, I think you more than anyone understands that we need to learn how to grieve. We need to learn how to grieve because we are all going to be faced with that.
That's right.
It's not going to miss any of us. We are all going to grieve.
That's right. And I think losing a child is probably the worst loss you could experience. Because I've lost both of my parents when they were very young. They were both 70 years old. But it's a normal thing to lose your parents. It's not normal to lose a son or a child. It really isn't. It's a very hard thing to go through.
Yes.
As most people would agree, because I have a lot of friends who have lost their children at one time or another, and it is very, very, very hard. So, but I think we need to take a break, don't we, old Eagle Eye over there? I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, KHTS.
There's a classic diner in town that combines old-fashioned dining with a hip 21st century menu. They call it trendy nostalgia. They call it Kathy's Deli. Kathy's Deli is a classic diner. Homemade jams, freshly baked breads, and even unique flavored coffee creamers made on site. Experience the fresh, new, yet old-fashioned taste of your local hometown diner. Serving traditional and unique breakfast and lunch delights every day from 7 to 3. Kathy's Deli on Lyons Avenue off Wayman Court.
At Advanced Audiology, we know how important hearing is to you, your loved ones, your work success, your safety, and your ability to stay in the game. Most people won't admit hearing loss to themselves or others. We make it easy for you. Today's digital hearing aids come in a variety of styles, including invisible. All feature-rich, providing unparalleled hearing quality, wearing comfort, and automation that simplifies your life. Don't be fooled by our imitators. There's only one Advanced Audiology with the purple sign, next to AAA on Valencia Boulevard.
Hi, Kirk Stinson here with Plumbing by Kirk, your hometown plumber. I want to stress to you how important it is to get proper advice on what to do in case of emergencies. Always know where your shutoff valves are to be able to isolate it and have the problem taken care of on regular hours and avoid expensive plumbing bill.
We invite you to visit our website for free plumbing advice at plumbingbykirk.com or give us a call, 263-6519. That's 263-6519.
My dad is the best plumber ever. Plumbing by Kirk.
Santa Clarita's hometown station.
Now FM, 98.1 FM and AM-1220, your hometown station.
Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, KHTS. And we're speaking with Sharon Brubaker, who is a grief recovery specialist. And we've been talking about all phases of grief, you know? And
especially one of those areas when we're talking to our seniors is in our grief. Part of that grief is as we get older, we start seeing that we're in the latter part of our life, and for some of my patients, they say, I'm at the end of my life, and I try to assure them, yes, it's the latter part of your life, but this is not you're not at end point yet.
End.
So, you know, one of the things that our patients face is death.
Yes.
And sometimes there's a fear of death. How do we get to the point of acceptance of death, that it's okay? How do we do that? I know as a doctor, I make sure they understand that my job as a physician is to make sure that they physically and emotionally don't suffer. And we have the tools to be able to do that. But Sharon, how do we get them there?
I think the biggest thing that you can do, and with my experience, is to talk about it. You have to talk about it. You have to talk about it with the person that's dying. You have to talk about it with the family that's around the person. But it cannot be a taboo subject. And you need to be talking about it as early as possible. Even, and I think you've experienced this, is setting up the plans. What does that look like for you? What are the things you want to be happening around that time? Because they really have the final say, right? And letting them share any of their fears and being open to hearing their fears, not correcting their fears, just giving them the safe place. So if you can imagine that you're just a big giant heart there, and I think the earlier we have the conversation, the more people in the family that get involved, And the conversation happened often that it becomes comfortable. It takes out the taboo. When my dad was passing away, he had gotten diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and it was in March. And he and I were sitting around the table, and we were talking, and I happened to ask him, so what do you want me to do? And he started he had been thinking about it. I could tell because I asked, he had all of this stuff to share. So I got a piece of paper and a pencil, and I started writing it down. And I looked at him, and I said, you can't expect me to do this by myself. They're not going to believe that I've heard all this from you. And so we just left it there. And about 3 weeks later, he says to me one day, I want you to call a family meeting. I had no idea this is what he wanted to talk about. And when he called the family meeting, he said, okay, Sharon, share the paper. And
Oh, my goodness.
I was like,
What a
what?
shock.
Okay. And so I got the paper out. I was able to get it out. And I said, these are the things your dad, there's 5 kids. These are the things your dad and I discussed. And we shared everything that was on the paper, even down to the song he wanted played at his funeral.
Oh, my goodness.
He wanted played a song I'd never heard, Black Limousine by Elvis Presley. And we were all like, what? Anyway, it was just a crazy song. But we played it. Do you know when my dad passed away in November, it was such a natural transition for us as the family members because we all knew what he wanted. We knew what scriptures he wanted at the service. We knew the things that he didn't care about. He even picked the people he wanted to talk about him.
Wow.
So we did every single detail according to and the things he didn't care about, he said, oh, you guys just decide. Oh, you just decide. So it just made it a natural transition. So I would really urge the person who's thinking about it, talk about this. I'm just talking about the funeral part right now, but talk about that part of what it's going to be like at the end. What if I can't speak anymore? These are the things I want you to know. I want you to know that I love you
right.
and I've always loved you. I want you to know I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of being alone. Don't leave me. Whatever you do, don't leave me. Whatever they are, we won't know unless we talk about them. In June of last year, my very, very best friend passed away, and I did the same thing with her. Because I had done it with my dad, I already knew to take it there. It was much easier for me to do it with her. And one day we were sitting in the hospital room, and I said to her, are you scared? And she just looked at me. She said, no. And it just opened the door to have a conversation. And she and I talked about what she thought it was going to be like. And I just asked a simple question, and then I just let her talk. So if I could leave you guys with anything, it would be, even if it's uncomfortable, try to have the conversation, because the seniors are thinking this stuff. It's in their head, but they don't want to scare you, so they're not gonna share with their children because they're like, I don't want to upset them or scare them. But by making it a normal and natural conversation, it can be a beautiful experience.
Yes, it can. And then, taking the complete opposite of this, how do you handle someone who wants to die, to get away from all of the pain? That is a very hard thing to work with.
That's hard. That's really hard.
Get me out of this mess. Do something. Get me out of this mess.
And from a clinical side, typically in cases of cancer, this is what we see.
Yeah.
And we don't want them to suffer, and that's why we do have hospice. So we put those patients on hospice. There are others, though, that you and I deal with here in Santa Clarita, Barbara, of suicide. And people, they're sometimes not in seniors. They are even, teens, and they're facing or looking at the thought of suicide. And that's question that you're asking is not, there's no easy answer to that. We try to deal with it and help people and counsel people, because of a lot of them are grieving in some way or another. They're grieving not just from loss of spouse or change of environment or anything like that. They're grieving from other rational things in their life, and trying to get them back is a different problem. So clinically, for cancer patients, I can deal with that.
Right.
But I find it so much harder, and I think for what we do, Barb and I do here in Santa Clarita with Miles McNamara and a few other people, quite a few other people, and trying to deal with that grieving process where one might say, I am suffering, and I'm going to commit suicide.
Yes.
So that's a different aspect of what we're talking about today as well.
A lot, and I'm so glad we're finally talking about it and taking the taboo off of it and having more and more of this conversation. And you know what, I'm not I don't diagnose. I'm not a medical doctor at all, but from a grieving aspect, there are 43 known losses we know that a griever can experience. Teens have their own set of losses, right?
Yes,
So
they do.
Parents getting a divorce, one of their brothers or sisters leaving home, even just going to college, if that was really close with that brother.
Bullying, peer pressure. I mean,
bullying,
you can just
peer
keep
pressure,
the list going and going
and
and going.
the abuse that they take from their own boyfriends and girlfriends at school. It's
yes.
a whole nother aspect. But again, my go-to rules are pretty much the same. Do you realize that a lot of times no one is even asked to talk to them or really listen to them?
That's
and so
right.
they internalize, they go inside, and they
do.
build this whole thing up. And I go back to when Austin died, my nephew, no one ever asked me about me. For 8 months, people would come up to me and ask me about Erica, or they would ask me about Lewis. Never once did anyone ever say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Sharon, how are you coping with this? Can you imagine what a difference that would be if we were to ask the kids, how are you doing today? I know you had that experience last week at school, but just listen to what they have to say. Even if ugly comes out, even if the ugly comes out, and 9 times out of 10 it will.
It will, absolutely.
And just don't even respond. Just give them a place. It's almost like a teapot, right? As a teapot, even on a small simmer, we know that teapot will start to boil. Well, a lot of times with these teens, it's just getting ready to boil over and giving them that safe place to talk, and you will learn so much about them, for sure.
When Columbine occurred, lots of people were discussing that issue, and there are famous people, interjecting and saying what would they have done. And one of the interviewers asked this famous musician who said, they asked, what would you say to them? How would you handle it? What are the words that you would give these teens? And he looked at the interviewer and said, I wouldn't give them any information. I would sit and I would listen to them. And that, when I heard that, I thought to myself, that is those are the key words. Listening. Listening will bring out all their concerns, all their worries, all their grief, and hopefully bring them back to normal at some point.
And we don't want to tell them not to be scared or not to be afraid, because those are normal emotions that will automatically happen, right? One of the things that I like to tell adults, I have a program called When Children Grieve, and it's for helping adults to help their children that are grieving. Turn off that radio in your car when you got your kids in the car and tell a story, even if you got to embellish it a little bit. I remember when I was a kid in high school and I went into school, and the girl came in the restroom and she said she didn't like the color of my skin, and she started a fight with me. And I just throw that out, okay? So I just throw this story out, and then I just shut my mouth. And what happens with the kids is they'll hear your story, and I attacked emotional words to it. So I say, and my heart was really broken because she hit me and it hurt really bad. And I'll just share this story. And then I just close my mouth. And what happens is you'll see the kids saying, well, Mom, you know what happened to me yesterday, blah, blah, blah. Because you've told a story and you put some emotional words to it. And these are little kids.
Connection.
And connection.
That's right.
Or
That's
even,
right.
let's talk about the griever, okay? So Austin died. It was my 10-year-old nephew. I have Jordan in the car with me. He was 3 at the time, 3, 4, and 5. And we would just talk about Austin in the car. I had a bad Austin day today. I was really missing him, and I was crying. And then I just stopped. And I just start driving. Now the radio's off, and he'll say, yesterday I was thinking about him a lot too. And what I did was I started the conversation. I said just enough to get him thinking, and then I just shut up and let him go. And he may not go into Austin at first. It may take me 2 or 3 times to get him going. But once he starts, I just listen. And then I follow it up with emotion words. And there's 5 main emotions that we can use for children: mad, sad, glad, afraid, or embarrassed. I was really
and all
afraid.
All of them apply.
Yes.
All of them do at one time or another. That's very true.
Because if you tell them how to react or you tell them how to feel, they're not going to do it. Don't be scared. Don't feel sad. They're not going to do it. But you can show them how to have the conversation with you. It's really, really key to helping through the grieving process and to teaching the kids. Can you imagine a world where we started off with our children, even this very, very early ages, what type of teens we'd be able to have conversations with these teens?
But, also, once again, as a doctor, I look at medicine as having different layers in it on how we treat our patients. And, there's the clinical side of book learning and getting experience working in the hospital and the clinics and, understanding some of the concepts. That's really important. But there's another side of this, which is the psychologic side that I think sometimes we tend to miss, and we don't capture that in what we need to do. When there is an article, front page of Los Angeles Times, about artificial intelligence and how they took doctors and they compared it to a computer. It's like, playing chess against a computer. Who's going to win in that? But they did a study with AI and had computers against doctors, and the computer constantly won, which said that, hey, the computers can be doctors and can be better. And I sat back, and for all the mad, glad, and all the emotions that one has, I think to myself, there's no way to be able to incorporate those emotions into just this whole idea of the physical side too. You have to put it all together into one big package, and the computer cannot possibly do that. So when I look at the comparison and the threat that is constantly out there, and I think it's a business profiteer's threat saying, we're going to use this computer. You go to this computer, and this computer is going to make that diagnosis for you. And you go, okay, 200 years, 300 years from now that might happen, but it ain't going to happen right now. AI will not take over as doctors or nurses or, any of the clinicians and psychologists and counselors that are out there. It is not going to work, because the human spirit and who we are is compacted with and connected to the physical and the emotional side of how we are as human beings.
So there is no way that a computer can do what you did yesterday. You sat at that patient's bedside, and he, I'm only imagining, probably said, I really miss her. She was my whole world.
With tears.
With tears. And you held his hand, and you listened, and you were his safe space. There's no way. There's no way that a computer is going to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Barbara and I were talking before you got here about how you make house calls and how valuable that is to a patient. I can only imagine them feeling safe and wanting to really trust you right away when you have let someone in your home, and then they share their most deepest thoughts. There's no way a computer is going to be able to compare to that.
And for me to walk into their home and Barb knows, because I do a house call on her husband, but, I look at the walls to see the photos and the history. I look to see there's a musical instrument or a Bible. I see pet food on the floor, and sometimes, terribly, I open the refrigerator to make sure there's nutrition there for them as well. I do all these things that give me an idea of who that person is. And, at times, and I've written about it, I'll walk in and be totally astounded for the next hour as I pick through past photos of their life and who they are and what brought them to where they are now. Yeah. So to me, house calls are what doctors should be doing. House calls will give back to us great medicine. But, we've moved to the opposite direction of that now. Yeah. And, whether my ideals of what medicine should be will come back and flourish, I hope it will. But for me right now, I've been doing house calls here in Santa Clarita for over 30 years. And that has allowed me to be a better doctor and take care of my patients in a more sensitive and sympathetic and empathetic way than other doctors do. So it's not a plug for me. This is a plug for house calls and hopefully having more doctors up here doing that.
Absolutely. It would be nice. It really would.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can remember my doctor, Dr. Lobo. He was from India. And when I was in England, I had whooping cough. And I remember it being very, very painful when I had to cough. And he came in and was giving me medicine and comforting me.
Yeah.
And it really makes all the difference in the world. It really does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's a shame. I agree with you, Jean, that it's a shame more doctors do not do house calls.
We'll work on it.
Yeah.
We'll work on it. There's so many things out there, not just in this community, but for the people in this country that we can do better. And right now we're not able to do that for the system that is there, but we're going to change that. I think the people will rise up, and if they listen, and I write about it, but I also talk about it, and many other people do too. But they're a small voice right now.
Yeah.
And when we finally step on that soapbox and start to scream and yell about it, hopefully others will listen as well.
Yeah, and I think knowing that, just as I can hear from your heart, is that knowing that, okay, I'm aware that this is possibly a grieving experience for them as well, and what you bring to them is such comfort. I can only imagine.
I think it makes a big difference.
Yes, for sure.
I think we need to take another break, don't we? Look at those fingers pointing at me. Okay, sir, here we go. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, KHTS.
Come join me, Arif Halby, for Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Every Tuesday at noon, we uncover ways to help you manage your money, get out of debt, and prepare for your retirement. That's every Tuesday at noon on Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Are you not sure if you can retire yet? Listen to us and learn about tips for savings, retirement strategies, and so much more. That's every Tuesday at noon on Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour on your hometown station, KHTS.
Little Eye Leaders is the newest preschool in the Santa Clarita Valley. At Little Eye Leaders, our outstanding teachers lead with intellect, perspective, and heart. That means our programs provide a warm, nurturing atmosphere to meet the unique needs of each child. We believe that play is a powerful form of learning for young children. That's why our kids have every opportunity to learn through the magic and excitement of play. Parents, schedule a tour today by calling 303-0400 or online at littleeyeleaders.org.
Aloha, friends! Go check out Honu Coffee, home of the best cold brew coffee. What makes their coffee special is how their organic coffee beans are infused with nitrogen to create a smooth and delicious cup of coffee. You'll also find traditional bold coffees and island-inspired signature drinks. They're the perfect place to catch up with friends or just relax with your favorite cup of joe. Honu Coffee on Lyons and Walnut in Newhall. Stop by and say aloha.
At Advanced Audiology, we know how important hearing is to you, your loved ones, your work success, your safety, and your ability to stay in the game. Most people won't admit hearing loss to themselves or others. We make it easy for you. Today's digital hearing aids come in a variety of styles, including invisible. All feature-rich, providing unparalleled hearing quality, wearing comfort, and automation that simplifies your life. Don't be fooled by our imitators. There's only one Advanced Audiology with the purple sign next to AAA on Valencia Boulevard.
Now FM, 98.1 FM, and AM 1220, your hometown station.
Will you still need me when
Welcome back to the Senior Hour. I'm Barbara Cochran with my co-host, Dr. Jean Dorio, on your hometown station, KHTS. And we're speaking with Sharon Brubaker, a grief recovery counselor.
Mm-hmm.
That was a hard word to get out.
But not an easy thought either, because we've been talking for this past hour, I think a good discussion about how grief affects us all at some point in life. And, you know, whether you're a senior and it's toward the latter part of your life, or you're a teen and facing a different kind of grief and a different kind of worry from the peers and the things that are going on around you. I think we're all faced with some kind of grief that I think we have to deal with.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes it's you have to deal with it in an extreme way and sensitive way, but sometimes you just, you know, have to just kind of let it ride and figure out the ways of getting through it. So it's not easy. And I'm not sure, Sharon, how, you know, you as a grief counselor and recovery person gets, you know, can go through life and continue to help people. I mean, it's very admirable for what you do.
It's such a rewarding career. It absolutely is. And
imagine.
Barbara can attest to this, is that the pain was so severe when Austin died. I didn't know how I was going to get through it, and I didn't know what to do. That was the biggest thing. I didn't know what to do. And having a guide that was able to guide me through the process when I had my grief recovery specialist changed everything.
Yes.
And the day I finished, it really settled in my heart. I have to help people. I was the director of catering and a professionally trained florist before this career, and I had done it for 21 years. And I specialized in brides, and I did with weddings, which is a different grieving experience to itself. Let me just tell you.
Hopefully, it's not too grieving for most people.
But I completely changed careers 12 years ago, and just knew that I needed to help people that were suffering from a loss of any kind. And I think you and I are hitting on the same thing here, Dr. Jean, is that most people don't realize that even simple losses in their life can create a grieving experience in their heart. And it's these grieving experiences in their heart that, when not dealt with, become this big giant pain or hole in their heart that becomes the area that they can't figure out or navigate.
Right, and it isn't necessarily grieving for a family member. People lose pets.
Yes.
And that is sometimes devastating.
Yes.
It really
Absolutely.
is.
Yes. Think about your relationship with your pet.
Oh.
It's pure love both ways, right? They look at you and they love you no matter what you do.
Absolutely.
And you look at them and they bring you joy. They bring you joy. So that relationship is based on pure love. And when that pet is no longer there, it is sometimes very painful. And as society will sometimes tell us, well, it's just your dog.
Yeah, just your dog.
It's just your cat.
Just your,
Oh, come on, get
If it were
over it.
just your
Let's
cell
go
phone, that
now.
would be okay.
It's never our cell phone.
I know my neighbor lost Mayo, the little canary.
Yeah.
And she was devastated.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely devastated. And I used to take care of him for her when they'd go off, you know.
Yeah.
And he'd let her out of the cage and she'd fly around the room and go back to her cage. But when she died, it was devastating.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. And letting people know that absolutely we can grieve a pet, and it is painful. And again, giving them the safe place to talk about. One of the programs I also teach is pet loss. And it is not uncommon for people to have to complete their journey with their pet, for sure. I would imagine your patient from yesterday also is not sure what to do with his new normal, and they become so lonely. I have a gentleman that I've just recently did my grief work with, and he is definitely in a better place. The pain is definitely gone, but he doesn't know what to do next. And so every few weeks I meet him, and we just meet for dinner. We did Monday night, and we've become friends. He's a great guy, and we just talk about different ideas. Hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I'm simply just his friend and just trying to help him figure out his new normal, because we know that once we grieve the relationship, the new normal doesn't have to be in pain.
That's right.
Right?
That's
But
right.
sometimes just being a friend to that person and having them listening, and just, we even looked on our phones, meetup groups that
Yes,
were
I know.
available.
Yeah.
And
I
we
know.
just looked at that, and he and I laughed. We had a good laugh. He told me he was going to try a dance class and this and that, but just to be that resource for him. Just, you guys, be next to your friends when they're at this point, and just try and give them some ideas.
And open your ears up and
Yeah.
your mind up and your thought process up and listen
Yeah.
as much as you can.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, for sure.
Really makes a big difference to someone.
Yeah.
So
Really does.
Sharon, if someone would like to get a hold of you, they know someone who is in that process, who not just a senior, but who at any different age, how do they get a hold of you?
They can find me at SharonBrubaker.com, SharonBrubaker, SharonBrubaker.com, or you can call me on my cell phone anytime at 661-212-0720. And I do text.
There you go.
That's
So you can
recently
text
what
also.
I've learned how to do. And my daughter says, Mom, you're texting. Wow. Because this thing is just for, I make a phone call and I'll receive it.
Yeah.
And that's it. But now I've learned to text. Oh, she was absolutely beside herself.
That's so funny. And if I don't text or call you back right away, I may be with a client, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And my daughter said, well, you've never sent me a text. And I looked at her and I said, you've never sent me a text. So the same thing happened to me.
Well, it's crazy. I see these kids, both thumbs going 90 miles an hour, and I'm thinking, how do they do that? I have to do it one finger at a time.
So if Sharon, we need to get a hold of you, 661-212-0720.
Yes, and if you go to my website, I have a free ebook there, and it is on grief and loss. It's an amazing book just to help grievers through, and also help the supporting cast members. I'm going to say the family members, the people that are around. It will help you with helping to guide them and understand how to listen to a griever and talk to a griever, for sure.
Wow. Great information today. We appreciate all your input, and I know our seniors who are out there were listening very carefully for all the things that you gave them today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We are sponsored by Advanced Audiology and Comfort Keepers in Home Care. Listen to us next week on the Senior Hour. Now go and enhance your quality of life.